Hello Exiles, Red Lord here. And yeah, I'm playing a new build currently, and it's quite of a beast. And I might sound a little bit arrogant this time, but I think it's one of the smarter things that I've done in PoE2 so far. Probably the smartest combination of stuff I've done in PoE2, and one of the smarter things I've done in PoE1. So keep in mind, I maybe sound arrogant in this one, but I'm proud of myself. So with that out of the way, what am I talking about? And it's the glorious mess you see on the screen in the gameplay in the background. And yeah, that's basically the thing I've come up with. You can make your Herald of Blood infinitely chain with itself. Just Herald of Blood and yeah, technically Herald of Plague. Sorry, so combination of Herald of Blood and Herald of Plague. You would have to spec some poison here and bleeding, and that was the whole theme of the character. I wanted to make a character that would be themed around both bleeding and poison, which I think I've done quite a good job of. Mainly I would say for the single target, it's mostly just pretty much bleeding for the single target and physical damage. But for clearing, it's mainly poison. So that's good enough for me, and I quite like this thing that I've come up with. And that's the Herald of Blood and Herald of Plague. Basically, Herald of Blood, you can pretty much make it chain off of itself. And yeah, the TLDR is you support Herald of Blood with chance to bleed support. That would do nothing, right? Because Herald of Blood cannot inflict bleeding. That's how it usually works with these skills that, for example, consume armor break. They cannot armor break, or consume bleeding or activate on bleeding. These skills usually cannot inflict bleeding because these things would basically be able to create infinite chains of usually some kind of explosions or something. But you can work around that by supporting Herald of Blood with 2 supports minimum. That's the minimum you gotta go to with this functionality, let's say. And that would be chance to bleed for Herald of Blood and bursting plague for a Herald of Blood. And the third requirement, I would say, would be getting enough chance to poison. And yeah, once you do that, you can make basically infinite explosions of Herald of Blood, proliferating poisons, and basically bursting plague creates physical damage explosion based on the life lost from poison on that enemy. So, and that physical damage from bursting plague can then, thanks to chance to bleed support, simply inflict bleeding again, thus proc your Herald of Blood again, and repeats the cycle. Herald of Blood poisons because it can poison. So Herald of Blood poisons, then poison procs the bursting plague bleeds, that procs Herald of Blood, and basically they ping pong of each other infinitely as long as there are enemies on the screen, thus creating basically infinite explosions of Herald of Blood. And then you just combine it with Herald of Plague, which spreads the poison off of that spreads the inflicted poison by Herald of Blood, which then creates multiple explosions of different enemies, right? And all of these enemies inflict the bleeding and thus proc the Herald of Blood and all of that. Keep in mind, for this to work, you gotta get enough poison damage and even gotta get enough bleeding damage, but that was not a problem at all. Herald of Blood doesn't scale with your weapon anyways, so weapon in this case doesn't matter that much. You just need to have, I believe it works just with spears, or maybe with some other melee weapons too, but I'm using a spear here. But yeah, you require your weapon just because it enables you to use the Herald of Blood, but the Herald of Blood doesn't actually scale with the weapon itself, with the weapon damage. So for the clear setup, it is really not that important, and especially because of Bursting Plague, also doesn't scale with the poison from your, or doesn't scale with damage of your weapon. It scales with the poison damage inflicted, and that poison damage inflicted is inflicted by Herald of Blood. So yeah, it's not that dependent on your weapon. That's what I wanted to say, basically. But yeah, other than that, the character just is everything I want it to be, and there's gonna be probably one more update on this one, maybe not. And I'm definitely gonna be making a build guide about this one, detailed, explaining how everything works and all of that. But now, let's just jump into the build and just let me show you the gear and the mechanics of this character. Alright, we're in game. Exiled green bleed red. That's because I'm doing green bleed, or not really. I'm poisoning and bleeding at the same time, so green bleed, right? But yeah, I'm currently level 90. Right, and I think we shall start with the skill tree first this time. And yeah, I'm a Ritualist, and before recording this video, I realized that I didn't do my 2 Ascendancy, so I have only 2, or basically 4 points. And that's for the +1 ring slot and increased effect of bonuses from your rings. Super powerful. I believe that's just, this is your stock standard Ritualist thing. The plan is to do my Ascendancy and take Wildwood Presence, and most likely as the Whispers Damned. And yeah, this is just some fun. You press and eat a corpse and get Headhunter buffs, or I don't know. Yeah, I played with it once and it felt like bit of a nothing package, but some extra fun when you get a good buff. But yeah, I'm playing a Ritualist, mainly for the +1 ring slot because I wanted to do some magic finding. And other than that, by the way, the skill tree and yeah, basically the build's gonna be, the link is gonna be in the description for the max roll, and then you can copy the POB link as always. But so we can take a look. But yeah, it's pretty much just taking the surrounded stuff, pathing from the right side of the skill tree all the way down for all of the surrounded stuff, because I'm using the constricting command. And yeah, that's pretty much it. For the main hand weapon swap, we're using these green points. This is a weapon swap 2. I actually have my main hand weapon on weapon swap 2. I might change it just for clarity and visuals, but it doesn't really matter on what weapon swap you have it, as long as you have the correct allocation of skills and points. But yeah, I'm using some life stuff, life leech stuff this time, and oh my god, does this feel good. Basically, this as far as I understand it, this is basically Slayer Overleech from PoE1 but on a skill tree, and yeah, it feels good. It feels good. The leech feels really good. I just never feel like I'm losing life because I'm pretty much always leeching, and it just feels so goddamn good. And yeah, other than that, I'm trying my best to scale both poison and bleeding. So the only really one ailment focused notes I'm taking is these 5 points for poison, for increased poison duration and +1 poison here. This is especially important once we get to talk about the Herald of Blood setup. But yeah, other than that, just some companion stuff, and this thing for my weapon swap 2, or weapon swap 1, sorry. This has nothing to do with damage or anything. This just I'm using it for one thing and one thing only. I actually saw this in a Methal's video, so I would say credit to him. But for aggravating bleeding, and I combine it with Rapid Assault, because Rapid Assault 6 hits 6 times with 1 click of a Rapid Assault, and you've got 40% chance to aggravate bleeding. So you're basically guaranteed out of that 6 time to aggravate the bleeding on the enemy. And I'm also speccing to Incision, because each hit that can apply Incision with this notable right here is going to make the enemy take 2% increased physical damage per Incision. So with one click of a Rapid Assault, you apply a 6 stack of Incisions, which is 12% more damage. If you get it to 10, which is the maximum, you apply 20% increased damage taken to physical damage taken to the enemy. And how you can do that is just simply link your Rapid Assault with Bleed 4. That's gonna disable the bleeding, thus it's gonna make it not be able to inflict bleeding, but it's going to be able to inflict incision, and yeah, then basically you deal more damage with bleeding from all sources, right? Or you can just apply incision and then press your Bloodhunt for massive damage, right? Something like that, but that's what I'm doing. And other than that, for this swap, it's just attack speed nodes. So yeah, that's pretty much the skill tree. As I said, the planner is going to be in the description. Now let's jump into something different, and that's the item setup. And yeah, let's start with the weapon as usually. Just a Grand Spear I crafted myself. I bought the base and then crafted on it. Basically, bought multiple bases and tried to hit it with perfect transmutation until I hit increased physical damage with attacks. And yeah, basically that was the base to start with. So yeah, I crafted this spear, but the thing is, spear is really important, of course, for damage, right? You would think. But the thing is, as I said, Herald of Blood doesn't actually... Where is it? The Herald of Blood doesn't actually scale with weapon damage. So you can have the million damage weapon in your hand, and Herald of Blood is not gonna do a million damage because it doesn't scale with it. But it scales with levels, so things like +4 levels from this weapon help the Herald of Blood a lot. And yeah, it's just a physical, high physical damage weapon, so we apply high bleeds. We don't care about attack speed that much. That makes it a lot easier to craft something like this. And yeah, 3 rings. I'm using 3 breach rings. I think I've landed on some really good rings for cheap prices, because all of these rings together cost me like, I believe, 7 divines, all of these 3, and they're pretty good. Keep in mind the physical damage rolls might look quite low, but that's because it's a tier 1 roll, but it's really bad rolled. So I can still increase that physical damage a lot by just divining my rings, and that's pretty much the same story on all of my rings. This is actually somewhat decently rolled, and this is, I believe, really low rolled. Yes. So yeah, basically fixing all your res on rings and also leech, thanks to the Ritualist and increased effect, makes it really easy to get res with just your jewelry. And amulet, I didn't really go for anything, or yeah, I did go for something specific. I wanted spirit, and I wanted some strength, and yeah, basically minimum 3 melee skills levels. And yeah, I bought it just like as you can see it right here, except the fracture. There was the +3 melee, but not fractured, and I actually tried to fracture the spirit, so I can then basically, it would be just a matter of currency to finish off the prefixes. If I would fracture the spirit, I didn't, so the prefixes will be a little bit RNG once I decide to finish them off. But yeah, that means I can just play a bit with my suffixes, right? If I keep this base, because this base will, like, the mana regen does pretty much nothing for us. So yeah, that's the amulet. And allocating anointing lasting trauma for massive increased magnitude of ailments you inflict and duration of damaging ailments you inflict. Just massive damage boost for this build, both for poison and both for bleeding. Yeah, constricting command, just the helmet I wanted to play with. This is the deepest, I would say this is almost the deepest tower of 0.3 patch. In previous patch, the deepest tower basically would scale all of these low life nodes, and honestly, deepest tower was just way more. I would say deepest tower was actually quite a lot stronger than constricting command. Not saying that constricting command is weaker. Constricting command is also actually giving you some quality of life, like movement speed and dodge roll distance here, maybe some accuracy and defense, as well as giving you crap ton of damage. But deepest tower just was you could slap on deepest tower and spec these low life points right here and this low life cluster right here, and that was all of your damage taken care of. Plus you could use the insane multiplier low life support. But yeah, that's talking about something that is not in the game anymore, and this time it's constricting command. The requirement is to get 5 fewer enemies, so you're surrounded at all times. It will work with 1 enemy, so you would buy it for cheaper, but the thing is, I just wanted the full confidence being at a full power at all times, so I bought -5 enemies or 5 fewer enemies, so we're all the time surrounded and we get all of these bonuses all of the time. Because, yeah, for example, the movement speed, I'm not surrounded right now. If I would have 4 fewer enemies, I would require at least 1 enemy to proc the surrounded, and that means for now I would have, for example, 10% less movement speed, right? The items, body armor, just high armor, body armor, again base that armor also applies. The Warlord Cuirass armor also applies to elemental damage with affix and the implicit, and just high life resist. And I'm currently working on finishing the last suffix. We shall see what will I desecrate. I had plans for desecration, but there is no way I can guarantee it, and I think that would be expensive, so we shall see what will I do with the desecration eventually. Shield, pretty much the same story. I need to finish it off with Perfect Exalted Orb, but the thing is, these shields cost nothing. These hybrid bases between armor and evasion rating, I bought this shield without the cold dress. I bought it just like this with these modifiers on it for like 10 exalted orbs, something like that. Basically for nothing. No one wants these shields, no one cares about them. Previously with this build I originally wanted to go for hybrid between evasion or hybrid between deflect and armor, but that didn't really work out, so I have a shield like this. This was 30 exalts or something, and it was listed for like 2 weeks, so no one really wants these shields and no one cares about them at all, so you can just go ahead, find some, buy them. I'm gonna sell these for, I don't know, 1 exalt or something, because no one's even gonna buy them. Forgot to mention, we're Iron Reflexes. We're converting all evasion into armor. This is pure armor and block build. These are the defensive layers. Sorry about that, forgot to mention it. So yeah, we're trying to convert all evasion to armor. That's why we don't care that much about bases. But this time I really want to hit against you, have reduced critical damage bonus, which is only available on armor evasion hybrid bases. Yeah. Boots, the same story. We could have pure armor boots here. Not pure evasion, but because we wouldn't get the armor also applies to elemental damage. But yeah, I went with these because these were cheaper. The hybrid armor evasion gear is, from what I've seen, always cheaper than pure armor. So I've got these really somewhat of a nice boots that I don't think I will be replacing. Gloves, pretty much the same story. Ideally, you would like to have pure armor-based gloves, but +2 melee skills, some decent, at least halfway decent suffixes, and a lot of armor plus life gloves that are pure armor. They're goddamn expensive, so I decided to go for hybrid base and bought these for, I think, a divine or 2, or yeah, just... If I would like to have these stats on an armor base, I would pay like around 10 divines, definitely, from the prices that I've seen, maybe more. By the way, I desecrated it myself for the lightning res, and yeah, I would pay just crap ton of money for gloves like these if they were pure armor, and these are not. And why would you want pure armor base? It's because of this notable right here, leather bound gauntlets. +1 evasion rating per 1 armor on equipped gloves. That means if we've got armor on our gloves, that's gonna give us flat evasion rating equal to the armor, and that flat evasion rating is gonna get converted by iron reflexes. But yeah, So we're getting basically the armor we have, 296 armor. We're also getting 296 evasion from these gloves, from that armor, thanks to this notable, once I eventually take it. And that then gets converted back to armor, thanks to iron reflexes. Does work for this notable right here, but doesn't work, I believe, for... yeah, basically doesn't work for things like these, or the increases. Yeah, the increases, sorry. Doesn't work for the increases, increased armor and evasion. It doesn't double dip, it doesn't increase your pre-conversion evasion and then increase the armor. It just increases the evasion after the conversion to armor. So the increased evasion does completely nothing. Don't worry, it doesn't double dip. So this notable, this small node would actually be just 12% increased armor and not actually evasion if we're iron reflexes. But this notable works. And yeah, lastly, we're using Darkness Enthroned with the magnitude of damaging ailments you inflict with increased effect as much as we can get. 107% was quite cheap actually. If I would if I would want like 110%, it would be extremely more expensive, and it would be just, I don't know, 4% more increased magnitude of damaging ailments. And yeah, you could also go Rislata's Coil here, but I didn't really want to, because Rislata's Coil makes the damage variance lower and higher, right? It makes your high and higher and your low and lower, and that works even for the Herald of Blood. But the thing is, a Herald of Blood cannot be supported by Defy, so its damage isn't lucky. So I decided that I'm gonna opt for Darkness Enthroned and make both our poisons and bleeding have increased magnitude by doing this. Yeah, that's pretty much the item. The charms, again, Silver Charm, no brainer this league. Immune to shock, because I feel like shock is kind of a problem sometimes, and Namahu's chosen just to sometimes get to full rage if we're not. A life flask, mana flask. Don't worry about mana flask. You don't need to press it basically at all. And yeah, that's pretty much the gear. On a weapon swap, I'm using basically identical shield that I'm having right here. So yeah, I'm actually not even kept. Well, never mind. Doesn't matter. Like, you're switching just to do one thing. 1, 2, and then you switch back. That's it. So you're basically, you could even do without a shield on this weapon swap. So yeah, now for the actual gem setup, it's just how should I start? Let's start from the top. Yeah. Spear Stab with Poison 3, Ambidexture, Deadly Poison 2, and Corrosion. This is just to have some armor break on bosses, and you do 1, 2, and basically, thanks to Corrosion, that poison inflicted from Spear Stab is gonna break the enemy's armor. And I just reached level 19, I didn't even get the chance to think what would be my last support, so guess wait for the guide or another video about this build. And yeah, Spear Throw, not using that anymore, so don't care about that. Rapid Assault, that's our aggravator, and we're using Defy, so just we don't have to worry about the mana. Bleed 4 to make it apply the incision and not cause bleeding. Armor break doesn't really matter at this point because we're breaking with our Spear Stab. And Rage to generate us Rage, and Uruk's Melting. As I said, the armor break doesn't matter anymore, so I might change it for more attack speed again. Yeah. Rake. That's our star of the bleeding, right? Linked with Defy 2, Brutality 3, Deep Cuts 2, Exploit Weakness, and Momentum. And I would say it's pretty self-explanatory, but I should talk about the Exploit Weakness and why I'm using it. It's basically because you get to a point where you deal so much damage with your hits that you're actually going to be able to kill monsters with just a hit of the Rake And if you kill monsters with the hit, it's not gonna be proccing your Herald of Blood, because the monster didn't get a chance to bleed. It was instantly killed with the hit, and since it didn't bleed, it's not gonna proc Herald of Blood. And that's why I'm using Exploit Weakness and not, for example, Close Combat Support, because this only does the 40% more damage against fully armor broken enemies. So I'm basically clearing on a 5-ling, and it's there when you need it, because if you're fighting, let's say, a tankier target, you're gonna spear stab it, and that spear stab is gonna break armor, and then you consume that fully broken armor for 50% more damage. But the other option, if you still find yourself having enough, or yeah, basically so much damage that you instantly kill enemies with hits, use this support, Piety's Mercy. Supported skills cannot kill enemies with hits. This should just completely fix that, so you could as well use this support right there. But yeah, also why Exploit Weakness is great, because we're using Scavenged Plating, and for our Scavenged Plating to have a good uptime on bosses, we actually need to consume the armor somehow, right? So we apply our armor break with just 1 click or 2 clicks of a spear stab. Trust me, this is gonna break the armor immediately. Then we consume it with Rake, and since it's a boss, we're gonna get all 10 stacks of Scavenged Plating, thus having 40% more armor up to basically all the time, not just while mapping. Yeah, that's the Rake setup. Also, you need to dash to the enemies to make the Rake deal more damage. The longer the distance, the more damage it does, up to 130% more. And also, you need to travel at least 2 meters for momentum to proc to deal 40% more damage. Bloodhunt with Defy 2, Heavy Swing, Brutality 3, Close Combat, and Momentum. Again, just really the only important thing here. To proc Momentum, you need to stand at least 2 meters out of the target you want to hit, and then it's gonna inflict 40% more damage. Sorry. Tame Beast, using it just if I find a better beast. And now the star of the show, the Herald of Blood. And by the way, I'll be making a separate video talking just about the Herald of Blood, but quickly explain it. Bleed 3, Bursting Plague, Poison 3, Escalating Poison, and Deadly Poison, linked with Herald of Blood. Herald of Blood cannot bleed, so the bleeding doesn't do anything with Herald of Blood, but Herald of Blood can poison. So the explosion of Herald of Blood poisons, thanks to like stuff like Poison 3 and our skill tree. Then that poison is gonna do the Bursting Plague. When the enemy dies, it's gonna trigger the Plague Burst, and the Plague Burst deals physical damage equal to 100% of plague on triggering enemy. So when the enemy dies, it's gonna trigger this physical damage explosion, and that physical damage explosion is gonna bleed, thanks to Chance to Bleed 3, and that bleed from the Bursting Plague is gonna proc Herald of Blood again, and then the cycle repeats. Herald of Blood poisons, triggers Bursting Plague triggers bleeding, and bleed triggers Herald of Blood. That's it. Infinite circle between these 3 supports. And yeah, other than that, it's just to boost the poison, because since Herald of Blood doesn't deal much damage, you actually need the help to poison a bit. The poison from it needs a bit of help, because the Bursting Plague doesn't deal damage of singular poison. It deals damage of accumulates basically the damage of all the poison on the enemy. So stuff like +1 poison and +1 poison on the skill tree right here. This is gonna enable the Herald of Blood to actually inflict up to 3 poisons, right? And that means that all 3 poisons together would deal enough damage to reliably proc good amount of Bursting Plague, and that Bursting Plague is gonna proc good amount of bleeding, and then gonna proc the Herald of Blood again. And the good thing is, Herald of Blood multi-hits, right? Because it activates on enemies that are close to each other, and those enemies are gonna have overlapping explosions, so you're gonna see you applying all of the bleeds with just a Herald of Blood, sorry. And by the way, also the Herald of Blood also aggravates the bleeds on the enemy, thus making the Bursting Plague bleed. The bleeding inflicted from Bursting Plague, it makes it basically be able to deal the aggravated damage, because this has a 62% chance to aggravate the bleeding, and that's just quite enough. So yeah, then using, that was the TLDR, as I said. I'm gonna be doing a separate video about this whole setup right here. Then we're using Herald of Plague. This is a crucial part of this Herald of Blood setup, just for one thing and one thing only: spreading poisons. This is gonna spread the poison and help the cycle proliferate between enemies. And by the way, this is always going to spread only the most damaging poison. Only one poison can be spreaded. Important. Then we're using Wind Dancer. 6-link, and the Wind Dancer is not actually here for defense, but for damage. We care about proccing it, and for that, that's basically why you see me completely autobombing the game, just holding down your keyboard for walking or something, or your mouse button, whatever, just autobomber setup. As soon as the enemy hits you, it's going to proc this, and a Wind Dancer's actually going to inflict bleeding, Bursting Plague, Poison 3, Corrosion, and Deadly Poison. The Corrosion because just to make it more comfy, to actually just walk around and have your armor plating, scavenge plating, sorry, at all times. So yeah, basically the same setup as the Herald of Blood, because this would enable the initial like bleed and the Bursting Plague. This would enable the initial poison and bleed. So this is going to apply both. This is going to apply both bleeding and poison. That's going to deal enough damage to kill the enemies. And then those enemies are going to be spreaded with the Herald of Plague poison. And yeah, basically going to be triggering the Infinite Herald of Blood and Bursting Plague cycle. But this is our enabler. Sorry. Yeah, basically the thing that enables this whole chain is Wind Dancer. But if you don't want to be autobombing like this, you can just use this exact setup on your basic attack, on your spear throw. That's what I was doing for a while. You can just do it on anything else. Yeah, but I'm using it on Wind Dancer. Then I've got a Roa with Haste Aura, and Roa actually reserves quite a low spirit. So yeah, I'm able to have the Roa. With Brutus Brain, just to make it impossible to kill. It literally is unkillable, but it cannot like tank for you, and it cannot like deal damage. So yeah, but we get these bonuses basically at all times, and that's what I want. Magnified Area, I thought it's gonna be working for the Haste Aura, but I don't believe it is, so Magnified Area, don't look at it, it does nothing. And then Scavenged Plating, absolutely doesn't matter what level of Scavenged Plating you're using, because it's just going to increase the thorn damage and not the actual duration. Only quality does increase the actual duration, and I'm using one support, prolonged duration. As I said, you can expect some updates on this build. Maybe gonna do one more update and then a build guide, full build guide, probably next week about this build. But yeah, definitely gonna be making build guide on this thing, because it is just so good. I love it. And yeah, I guess that's it for the video. Thank you very much for watching, Exiles, and see you next time.